Um, uh-oh. Hold on a second. We have an issue with our little Facebook over here, so let's fix Facebook. Sorry about that, guys. Give me 1 second. That'll give us time for people to start getting on here. All right. It looks like everybody is good to go. So, every day we get new people, and so every day I just want to introduce what we're doing here in these daily live streams. We come live Monday through Friday, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, to go over some tips and tricks that are going to help us to live a better life. Hey, Nada. And today we are talking about relationships. Well, we started yesterday. What we're doing is going over The Power of Now as a book study upon request from those of you that have viewed this for going on what we've been doing this for 2 months now. We are on chapter, I believe this is chapter 8. If you have the same book that I have, we're on page 147 where we're just talking about some of the dynamics within relationships and how to create healthy relationships with ourselves first, but then with other people in our lives. So, just for those of you that don't know me, I always forget to introduce myself because I just assume that the people stay the same, even though I'm getting messages and, a lot of you watch the replay. I started off working doing spiritual mentorship, but now I work primarily with women in healthcare. So women that are leaders in healthcare that kind of feel like they are stressed out, burned out, and like they're losing themselves in the day-to-day practice. And helping them understand that there's a better way and an easier way to accomplish leadership in your personal and professional life. And that's through building a foundation from what I call your power place. So although I've worked with and still work with men and women in many different fields, I feel called to work specifically with women in healthcare because it's something that I know. And I know that it's something that's much needed. And I know that you guys are probably struggling right now with all of the ups and downs going on when I'm talking to my peers. So, anyway, Power of Now, book study, page 147. Today we're talking about love and hate relationships, or we're starting off talking about love and hate relationships. So, he says, and he is Eckhart Tolle for those of you that have never read this book before. So, he says, unless and until you access the consciousness frequency of presence, all relationships, and particularly intimate relationships, are deeply flawed and ultimately dysfunctional. And if you want to know more about presence, we'll probably talk about it more throughout this book study tonight. However, there's a playlist on the YouTube channel if you want to get caught up on some of the previous conversations that actually teach you how to tap into being more present in your life, or again, what I call living life from your power place. So, your relationships may seem perfect for a while, such as when you're in love, but invariably that apparent perfection gets disrupted as arguments, conflicts, dissatisfaction, and emotional or even physical violence occur with increasing frequency. It seems that most love relationships become love hate relationships before long. Love can then turn us into savage attack, feelings of hostility, or complete withdrawal of affection at the flick of a switch. Ooh, y'all used to be good for that. If you didn't do love me the way I wanted to be loved, and I didn't tell you how I wanted to be loved, you should just know because I know how to love you, so you need to know how to love me. And if you didn't do it right, then I would build up resentment, or I would completely withdraw at the flick of a switch and then wonder why I wasn't having fulfilling relationships. That was me. So I don't know. As we're going through this, try to identify, have a little bit of self-awareness for the patterns that you may bring into your relationships as well. Let's see. This is considered normal, right? And if you look around maybe at the relationships that you see within your friend group and the relationships that you see or saw growing up, you may start to see some patterns that a lot of people that think struggle and pain and strife and ups and downs and love and hate in relationship is normal. And that's truly not the case. There are some people that while life may throw them curveballs, are still able to create and sustain a love that is steady, that builds, that grows every day, that's easy, that flows. It is possible. Anything other than that is not normal. So he says the relationship then oscillates for a while, a few months or even a few years between the polarities of love and hate, and it gives you as much pleasure as it gives you pain. It is not uncommon for couples to then become addicted to this, right? Because, when you are fighting, you get addicted to the drama because it could be a whole bunch of different things. Some people are addicted to attention, or maybe that's the only way that you get attention, and you don't even consciously know that you're doing it. But then you also get addicted to the ups because then it's the honeymoon period. You're making up, you're releasing hormones in your body. And then so you ride this wave and you become addicted to that again and thinking that that is normal. Their drama makes them feel alive. So drama that you may have experienced in your relationships make you feel alive. I have worked with clients that are in very good relationships that just need to be nurtured and cultivated, but because they do not have this drama, they take it to mean that it's a boring relationship. No, you don't have a boring relationship. You have a healthy relationship, and you just need to cultivate some of the things that are going to bring in what is going to make you and your partner feel more loving and more supported. When a balance between the positive and the negative polarities is lost and the negative destructive cycles occur with increasing frequency and intensity, which tends to happen sooner or later, right? If you're not in a healthy relationship and you're not learning how to cultivate relationships from your true power place because you're not living from that place, then it will not be long before the relationship collapses. It may appear that if you could only eliminate the negative or destructive cycles, then all would be well and the relationship would flower beautifully. But alas, this is not possible. I want you all to really think about this because a lot of the times when we hold on to something, a circumstance or a person or relationship that is not good for us, because we can see everybody in the good parts is good, right? But that's normal, right? In any good part of any relationship, yeah, you can see the potential. And so you tend to think that if we could just get over the bad, everything would be okay. But that's like duh common sense, right? If any relationship didn't have any problems, then it would be a good relationship. But we use that justification to kind of hold on to things that we know aren't for our highest and best good, and also to continue to perpetuate behavior within our relationships that aren't truly going to cultivate the type of love that it is that most of us are hoping that we can experience someday in our life. The polarities are mutual interdependent. You cannot have one without the other. The positive already contains within itself the as yet unmanifested negative. Both are, in fact, different aspects of the same dysfunction. I am speaking here of what are commonly called romantic relationships, not of true love. So there's a difference. A lot of us are trying to cultivate these loving relationships in relationships that may only be romantic relationships, not true love, which has no opposite because it arises from beyond the mind. And if you don't understand what we're talking about when we say that we're not approaching life from our power place and you are being a slave to your mind and being a slave to your emotions, then again, you need to go back and you need to study the replays. Love as a continuous state is as yet very rare as conscious human beings. So, what he's saying, and what you may need to think about, is the role that you play in your relationships if you are under the assumption that you are going to create a loving relationship when you are not living consciously. It's not possible. Even if, like he says, it starts off good, eventually it falls apart, or eventually and inevitably it'll let you down, because it's not what we were put on this earth to do. The ultimate expression of one of the things that we are meant to do in this earth is to experience true love. But because a lot of us are living life unaware and in autopilot and thinking that who we really are, our mind and our thoughts and all of these things, thinking that's who we are instead of knowing how to tap into our true being, a lot of us will just go through the motions of life, never having felt or experienced what it means to have true love. Brief and elusive glimpses of love are possible whenever there is a gap in the stream of mind. So he's not saying that you won't have little glimpses of it, but you won't be able to experience love as a continuous state and a continuous presence in your life without doing the work that you need to do to learn what it means to approach your life, your profession, your personal stuff in a more conscious manner. The negative side of a relationship is, of course, more easily recognizable as dysfunction than the positive dysfunction. So let's see if he breaks this down. And it is also easier to recognize the source of negativity in your partner than to see it in yourself. It takes two to tango, right? It can manifest in many different forms. It could be possessiveness, jealousy, control, withdrawal, unspoken resentment, the need to be right, insensitivity and self-absorption, emotional demands and manipulation, the urge to argue, criticize, judge, blame, or attack, anger, unconscious revenge for the past pain inflicted by another parent or partner or another person, and the rage and physical violence. So that's easy. We can all see that negative perpetuating, especially in our partner, not so much in ourselves, especially when it's subtle. Women, you may hate me for this, you may not agree with me, but women are better at being more emotionally manipulative. And because it's not something that is considered to be bad in society, some of the ways that women approach relationships can tend to be manipulative. And I want you to look at manipulative not in a word that's going to trigger you, but look at it in its literal sense, that you are trying to do whatever it is that you can to control an outcome, right? I think men do it too. I just think women are more subtle at it, maybe a little bit better at it. And it tends to be a more insidious, subtle, covert way that energy can be injected into a relationship. And so therefore it's easier to see when a man is overtly not showing up in a relationship, but because a woman can do it in a more covert way, it oftentimes is harder for us to self-examine how we are destructive in our relationships, particularly when it's not just blatant negativity like you just mentioned. On the positive side, you are in love with your partner. This is at first a deeply satisfying state. You feel intensely alive. Your existence has suddenly become meaningful because someone needs you and they want you and they want to make you feel special. And you do the same for him and her. And when you're together, you feel whole. That feeling can become so intense that the rest of the world just fades away into insignificance. However, you may also have noticed that there is a neediness and a clinging quality to that intensity. You become addicted to the other person. He or she acts on you like a drug. You are on a high when the drug is available, but even the possibility or the thought that he or she may no longer be there for you can lead to jealousy, possessiveness, attempts at manipulation through emotional blackmail. And emotional blackmail can be, I used to do, withdrawing of affection at the flick of a switch because I was just not feeling you at that moment. So that's emotional blackmail. Blaming and accusing, fear of loss. If the other person does leave you, this can give rise to the most intense hostility or the most profound grief and despair. In an instant, loving tenderness can turn into a savage attack or dreadful grief. Where is the love now? Can love change into its opposite in an instant? Was it love in the first place? Or was it just an addictive grasping and clinging? And, that's something that we all have to examine in our own interpersonal, intimate relationships and answer some tough questions sometimes for ourselves. The reason why the romantic love relationship is such an intense and universally sought after experience is that it seems to offer liberation from deep seated states of fear, of need, of lack, and incompleteness that is part of the human condition in its unredeemed and unenlightened state. There is a physical as well as a psychological dimension to this state. On the physical level, you are obviously not whole, nor will you ever be. You are either a man or a woman, which is to say, one half of a whole, right? Because truly a whole is man and woman. However you define that, but it's energy. Let's just talk about energy. On this level, the longingness for wholeness, the return to oneness, manifest as male female attraction. And again, I'm talking more energetically. A man's need for a woman's need for a man. It is an almost irresistible urge for union with the opposite energy polarity, he states. The root of this physical urge is a spiritual one, the longing for an end to duality and the return to a state of wholeness. Sexual union is the closest you can get to the state on the physical level, and this is why the most deeply satisfying experience with, in the physical realm that can be offered is through sex. But sexual union is no more than a fleeting glimpse of wholeness, an instant of bliss. As long as it is unconsciously sought as a means of salvation, you are seeking the end of duality on the level of form where it cannot be found. You are given a tantalizing glimpse of heaven, but you are now not allowed to dwell there, and you find yourself again in a separate body. On a psychological level, the sense of lack and incompleteness is, if anything, even greater than on the physical level. As long as you are identified with your mind, with the mind, if you think that your thoughts are a part of who you are, are who you are, then you have an externally derived sense of self. That is to say, you get your sense of who you are from the things that ultimately have nothing to do with who you are. And this is what a lot of us have to come to terms with in some form or another. Now, do we actually learn the lesson from this? And do we actually start to live more conscious lives? I'm not really sure. Most of us know. However, usually if we are basing who we are on our social roles, our possessions, our external appearance, our successes, our failures, our belief systems, and so on, these things will continue to experience changes and upheavals. And usually some of them are changes and things that we cannot control. And so we continuously find ourselves in states of identity crises when the things that I have mentioned don't go as expected. So we have this habit in society today of basing our identification of who we are on these external things. And this false, mind-made self, the ego, feels vulnerable, it feels insecure, and is always seeking new things to identify with to give it a feeling that it exists. But nothing is ever enough to give it lasting fulfillment. The fear remains, and the sense of lack and the sense of neediness remains. And unfortunately, in our culture, we actually promote this. I'm not saying that we need to just, sit on a recliner in life and never progress in life. However, there is this thirst to continuously seek these external things, thinking that's going to make us feel fulfilled and whole. And as we continue to get the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, what we realize is that the longer that we identify our true sense of self and being with those things, we're continuously missing out on that connection to be with ourselves. So, all right, so the fear remains, the lack remains, the neediness remains. But then a special relationship comes along and it seems to be the answer to all of the problems that you have. The special relationship is going to just fix everything, right? So we have this person come into our life and we think that this person is going to meet all of our needs. And at least that is how it appears at first. All the other things that you derive your sense of self from before now becomes insignificant. So, and you can see it, you may see this happen in life. Like when you do find somebody that you fall in love with, you do start to kind of not care so much about, not saying you don't care about your appearance, but it takes a back seat almost, because there's a sole single focal point that replaces all of these things that you thought mattered in life, right? Because we often will say, well, I thought all of these things mattered until I fell in love. However, if we're not living consciously, what we'll find is that, are we really in love? So you have a single focal point that replaces them all, that gives them meaning to your life, and through which you define your identity, the person that you are in love with. You are no longer disconnected. You are no longer a disconnected fragment in an uncaring universe, or so it seems. Your world now has a center, the loved one. The fact that the center is outside of you, and that therefore you still have an externally derived sense of self, does not seem to matter to you at first. And a lot of you maybe don't even know this, right? Because again, this is not something that we've been taught. What matters is the underlying feelings of incompleteness, the fear, the lack, the unfulfillment, so characteristics of our egoic state that are no longer there when we fall in love. But he says, or are they? Have they dissolved? Or do they continue to exist underneath the happy surface of reality? If in your relationships you experience both love and the opposite of love, attack, emotional violence, and so on, then it is likely that you are confusing ego attachment and addictive clinging with love. You cannot love your partner one moment and attack him or her the next, even if they ain't doing what you want them to do, even if they acting up. You cannot replace love. You can't have that love, and then in a moment when they're not responding or acting the way that you expect them to act, then you don't love them anymore. True love has no opposite, he says. If your love has an opposite, then it is not love, but a strong ego need for a more complete and deeper sense of self. A need that the other person temporarily meets. It is the ego's substitute for salvation, and for a short time, it almost does feel like salvation. Oh, look, he's saying what I already just said. I just know it from experience. You guys probably know it too. But there comes a point where your partner behaves in ways that fail to meet your needs, or rather those of your ego. And then the feelings of fear and pain and lack that are an intrinsic part of ego consciousness, but has been covered up by the love relationship, will now start to resurface. Just as with every other addiction, you are on a high when the drug is available, but invariably there comes a time when the drug no longer works for you. When those painful feelings reappear, you feel them even more strongly than before. And what is more, you now perceive your partner as the cause of those feelings. This means that you project them outward and you attack the other with all the savage violence, and I could say even metaphorical violence. So it doesn't have to be physical violence. We'll just say metaphorical or physical violence that is a part of your pain. And then this attack may awaken your partner's own pain, and then he or she may counter your attack. And then at this point, the ego is still unconsciously hoping that its attack or its attempts at manipulation will be sufficient punishment to induce your partner to change their behavior, so that it can then use them again as a cover up for your pain. Y'all, this is deep. And if you have struggles in your relationships, particularly not even your current relationship, but I'm going to say all your relationships, if you have struggles in your current relationships, these up and downs, these love, hate, or even if you think that you are in love, maybe it's still in that new phase, I want you to go back and really listen to this and examine what he is saying. And examine your level of consciousness and the way that you approach your life, because this is going to be extremely helpful information that will help you to end the struggles that you may experience in relationships that you're in now. It'll help you understand relationships that you have struggled with in the past, and it'll help you to learn what it truly takes to build and cultivate a better relationship in the future. Every addiction arises from an unconscious refusal to face and move through your own pain. Every addiction starts with pain and ends with pain. Whatever the substance you're addicted to, alcohol, food, legal or illegal drugs, or a person, you are using something or somebody to cover up your pain. That is why, after the initial euphoria has passed, there is so much unhappiness, so much pain in intimate relationships. They do not cause pain and unhappiness. They bring out the pain and unhappiness that is already in you. Every addiction does that. Every addiction reaches a point where it does not work for you anymore, and then you feel the pain more intensely than ever before. This is one reason why people are always trying to escape from the present moment and are seeking some kind of salvation into the future. The first thing that they might encounter if they focus their intention on the now is their own pain. And that is what they fear. If they only knew how easy it is to access in the now the power of presence, what I keep calling your power place, if you only knew how easy it was to access your power place, that is what is going to dissolve that pain. And that is what's going to dissolve the past and the reality that dissolves the illusion. If only they knew how close they are to their own reality and how close they are to God. So he's basically saying how close you could be and are to those things if you learn to live life from your power place. Also, the avoidance of relationships is an attempt to avoid pain, and that's not the answer either. The pain is going to be there anyway. And that's so true, right? We get out of a relationship and then we talk about how we're not going to get in a relationship no more and nobody's going to hurt us and all of this and all of that. When in all actuality, it doesn't negate the fact that we are experiencing the underlying internal pain that he's talking about. It just means that we're avoiding the trigger that brings it out of us when we approach relationships or get into relationships from that state of consciousness, right? 3 failed relationships in as many years are more likely to force you into awakening than 3 years on a desert island or shut away in your room. Because truly, because we value connection with other human beings for reasons which he did talk about at the beginning of this live today. Among other things, because we value that, then that is where we tend to learn a lot of our life lessons, whether good or bad. It's through our relationships with other people. So he's saying that being in a relationship, even if it fails, is going to be more enlightening or more helpful to your personal growth and your consciousness than saying that you don't want to be in a relationship and avoiding it like being in a desert for 3 years. But if you could bring intense presence into your aloneness, then that could work for you too. So if you're saying that you want a period of aloneness because you want to work on being a more conscious person, then of course that's going to work. But a lot of us don't do that. We just say that we're going to be by ourselves to avoid the pain. All right, so I'm going to stop there. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about how we go from such relationships like these and the ones we talked about yesterday into more enlightened relationships. And I think in the upcoming section, he also teaches us about maybe you are with somebody and you want to try to see if you guys can change it because you mutually know that maybe there's some pain and some hurt and you guys want to move past that to create something better. I don't think all is lost. So if it sounds a little bit discouraging what we were talking about today, I think tomorrow will give you a little bit more answers on how to shift the energy in the relationship. So I'm going to leave it there. Right before I go, you all know that if you want to know what it feels like to learn how to live a life from your power place, where you are living your professional and your personal life with more ease, you're cultivating better relationships, you have a deeper understanding of who you are, and you're able to connect with your values and live life from that space, which means you have more meaning and more purpose, and you just have an overall lighter, stress-free life where you're living life with this internal connection, this self-awareness, this consciousness that we're talking about. Then I am accepting private clients. And if you want to know more about how to work with me, you can either on Instagram go to the link in my bio. And if you're watching from Facebook, from LinkedIn, from YouTube, with this video, there should be a link for you to click to learn more about coaching. You can also email me at yashika@yashikasintuition.com. So my email is yashika@yashikasintuition.com. You can also just send me an email, and I will send you some information to learn more about how you can apply to work with me one-on-one. Otherwise, I will see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. and we'll learn what we can do to shift the energy in our relationships now that we understand more about the dynamics of how most of our relationships go down. All right, see you tomorrow. Bye.